Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives about their mental health journey. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these conversations bring you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am so excited to have my dear friend Taylor Blackwell on the podcast today. As I mentioned, when I first bring her on, she has had a insane career already, but of course we cannot talk about so many things because I am recording this on September 20th and the SAG-AFTRA strike is still happening. So please check out her IMDb and her Instagram, and then that way you can get a little bit of insight into all of the things that she has going on. But before we jump into this episode, I want to give a special shout out to Ryan Ricks of Salt and Sea Studios. He is a friend and the incredible composer of the new opening music that you just heard. I am so thrilled to have been able to collaborate with him on the new opening music of the More Than You See podcast. And I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know and let Ryan know, because I'm sure he would love to know your feedback and your thoughts as well. Let's jump into this episode with Taylor. We cover so many different things on this episode. As I mentioned, she has quite a prolific career. Even though she is only 25, she has been acting professionally since she was 5 years old. And so we talk a lot about growing up in the industry, what that has done to her mental health, how she has learned how to stabilize herself and how to build in boundaries and fail safes and ways that she can protect herself as she continues to grow and thrive in this career. She is also a multi-hyphenate. She is a writer and a singer-songwriter and has dreams of becoming a showrunner. And since I know her, I am not at all shocked whenever that happens. I think she is 100% going to get there. And so we talk about that as well, career goals, all of the ways that we are striving for the things that we want in life. I think this episode is going to resonate whether you are in the industry or not. And I hope that you enjoy listening to this conversation with Taylor as much as I enjoyed recording it. Hi, Taylor. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I had a bad dream that woke me up this morning, and I still feel kind of tired from it or like low energy or something. But
Yeah,
aside from that, I feel pretty good actually.
that's awesome. It's interesting because this season I'm really trying to, if people give me the generic, like, I'm good, I'm trying to like,
I know. I listened to a podcast of yours right before this, so I knew what was coming.
yes, that makes
But
me happy.
I listened to your episode with Jessica Erin Martin,
Mhm.
who seems wonderful. I don't know her personally,
Yeah.
but that was really I have 12 minutes left of it, but I really enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's she's incredible, as are you.
Mm.
And I'm really excited to have you on. I know that you are a crazy multi-talented human being, that you are a writer, a songwriter, and a singer and an actress, and I'm sure a writer, a screenwriter as well, and so many other things. And everyone should go and look her up because unfortunately, we are at the time of recording still on a SAG after strike. So we can't mention any of the projects by name that you have been a part of, but we're certainly going to touch on them. And so you should go and do some sleuthing and look her up, and then you can guess which projects I'm talking about when I'm mentioning the
Ooh,
projects.
kind of
Um,
makes it fun in a way.
yeah, exactly. It kind of
Add some mystery.
totally. Um, so I want to start with you at the beginning because you have been part of this industry for a long time since you were a kid. And so, that's something that I actually haven't had someone on who has been doing this professionally, being paid to, act since you were a child. And I'm wondering, how you first got involved in that and how your like self-awareness and journey of self has gone through the years because you really kind of have grown up in this industry.
Yeah, I started acting when I was 5. So and I just turned 25 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Time is flying. So and before that, like, when I was 3, I was doing child modeling, so it's kind of all I've ever known.
Yeah.
I started in South Florida, which is where I'm from, and there's kind of somewhat of, like, a natural progression of, like, young models also doing commercials, and that's really where I got my start. But I was doing an after school program where I was taking a dance class and taking an acting class. That was kind of my first sort of time acting or being on the stage. And my teacher wrote me this like skit that we performed where I played a 5-year-old genius. And I was supposed to be answering questions for people. It's called Stump the Genius. And they all wanted
Uh-huh.
to see if they could ask me something so crazy that I wouldn't be able to answer it. Like, why is the sky blue? Or spell out the longest word in the English language, things like that. And it was more like memorization versus actually acting at that point. But I I do have like a semblance of that memory and I remember enjoying that feeling of being on stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it just kind of like snowballed from there. But as far as like how did you phrase it? Like my sense of self through that
Yeah.
process?
Just like growing up in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm reflecting more and more on that as I get older and the things that were magical about it and the things that were maybe not so okay about it. But I think one of the big things that I've had to work through and continue working through is people pleasing because I feel like I've been trying to charm people so much of my life, be it like casting directors or producers or even just like my teachers at school. Like, I'm a straight A student, so I'm allowed to go like film this thing because I'm doing well in the school.
Right.
So I think at some subconscious level, I've felt the pressures of all of those things and also the weight of being a child and having something somewhat revolve around you and how well you're going to be able to do and behave like a little adult.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel, something that I talk about a lot on this podcast that I'm sure you heard in Jessica's episode too is like masks that we wear and different personas that we take on. Um, is that something that you have felt shift either consciously or unconsciously as you've grown older?
100%. I think I can kind of almost pinpoint where things started to shift for me, which
Mm.
is I I formed a band when I was a teenager, when I was 19. And I formed it with my friend and she's always been by nature more rebellious and stick it to the man. And I was always more sweet and soft spoken and wanting to please. But we formed this punk band together and it was kind of the first time I had an opportunity to scream, like actually scream and not just into a pillow and to start speaking up for the things that were bothering me. And that changed so much for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you has LA been mostly your base? Like when
I
once you
moved here 5 days after I turned 18. So I just had 7 years, I
that's
think,
amazing.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It feels like it went by in part so fast and also when I think of who I was when I moved here. I mean, I feel like at this age you're changing so much every year, every couple months, but
Yeah.
it's the age, the amount of change between 18 and 25, or even just like 18 and 21 is so vast, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Absolutely. One of the projects that you were involved with is a project where you went up to Vancouver to shoot. And I have one of my best friends lives up in Vancouver. And so I'm going to actually ask her about this as well. But I'm curious, did you find a big shift going from California and then Florida as well, which is like mostly sunny? It's just like has a very different vibe than Vancouver, which I know like like seasonal depression is actually
Mm.
a disorder. And that is something that my friend has talked quite extensively about the fact that like when she went to Vancouver, she felt just like the oppressiveness of the weather and stuff up there. And I'm curious if you had that experience at all.
I was only there for a month the first time I went, so I I think it probably would have affected me more had I been there longer. But definitely to a degree, at first I was like, "It's raining, it's beautiful, it's kind of chilly, I love it." And yeah, and then it kinda gets old pretty fast, and I'm thinking about maybe moving to New York or spending more
Interest
time there, and that is in the back of my head something that I'm like, "Oh, am I gonna be able to do well with that? Am I just gonna be cold and miserable?" Because I am so used to the heat and the nice weather,
right.
and it's kind of all I've really ever known.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, even when it's raining here, like I think was at the beginning of this year that was just raining nonstop, like all of January. That was absolutely impacting my mood for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say, I mean, I know that when we, offline, I mentioned to you that like we actually haven't talked much about mental health, but I know that it is a big part of, your consciousness and what you are also, concerned with. And I'm curious, do you feel like your music or your acting is a better way for you to like get in touch with your feelings and like your mental state?
It's a close call. Maybe music slightly more since I'm actually singing about things that are lived experiences. And also, I think sometimes just through writing music or writing anything, things start to pop up that you didn't even realize you were feeling or thinking about. So I think in a way that has been maybe slightly more of a catharsis. It was really interesting hearing your in that interview I mentioned with Jessica, the like drama therapy thing
Yeah. Hmm.
of not having acting be the only tool to work through the things you're dealing in your personal life, and how
Right.
sometimes method acting or other things can be almost have the reverse effect if you're relying on that. That might not be good. But also at the same time, I do feel that you are, of course, using so much of who you are with every character, no matter what the character is. So there is a catharsis to that too. But I guess music, just since it's more of my stories specifically being told.
Yeah. How have you found that your music has evolved as you've gotten older?
It's funny because when I was a teenager writing music, everything I was experiencing at that time felt so much bigger.
Mhm.
Like if I got my heart broken, it was really shattered.
Yeah.
Where now I I don't know if it's jadedness or wisdom, but I think it is just like growing up. Things
Yeah.
don't really maybe hit you in the same way that they would when you're 19 or however old. And so I think from that aspect, things have changed, but I find myself trying to, as I write now, almost get in touch with that part of me that feels things in such a deep, earth-shattering way.
Interesting. Interesting. So I want to dig into that a little bit more. So like you feel like the jadedness and the age sometimes can like remove us from our feelings. And so sometimes when you're writing music, you want to make sure that you're tapping into like deeper emotions. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like the drama and the passion of it, um, that just came so naturally when I was first writing songs. If
Right.
I went out with someone and they disappointed me, I'd go home and I'd write it all down aggressively on a piece of paper. But now it's more like me sitting where I'm sitting or sitting on the floor and I'm drinking my tea and I'm kind of writing things down in a more contained, calm
Yeah.
way. And it's more reflective versus working through something in the heat of the moment. Yeah, reactive is the perfect word for it. But, but even though I'm older now, things do still hurt sometimes in that same kind of deep, painful way.
Yeah.
And, uh, maybe I have my own walls up to protect myself, but when I'm writing, I try to lower those walls maybe the slightest amount.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It's interesting because, the goal in like the mental health space, I feel, is to just have like a baseline of steadiness where you can, like have high highs and low lows, but they're still much closer to your foundation than those spikes and those drops that we experienced when we like weren't able to self-regulate as much. Um, and it's so interesting to hear you say that because I've heard with other artists that are like very famous that like their psyche is kind of trapped in the age that they became famous. Like whatever age
Yeah.
they were, that is kind of where they stay. Um, and I can completely see that where you are kind of trying to chase, those high highs and those low lows. So that's really interesting.
Well, I'm also, for that reason, very glad that I was not famous at a young age.
Right.
I felt like I was genuinely very close to that several times as a young actor. And looking back on it, I'm really thankful that that was not my path because I
Yeah.
think that'd be really difficult. It's been it's been helpful for me to, I think, in part of the self-regulating, get to the bottom of feelings that I maybe thought I resolved or didn't realize I had that amount of pain. It's sometimes until I start the writing that I'm like, "Oh, I still need to work through that thing."
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do you remember, like, if you can take yourself back to one of those times where you, like, thought that this was gonna be, like, a big break for you at whatever age you were? And, how did you manage to, like, get yourself out of the disappointment? And because 'cause I'm sure that, like, when you were experiencing it then, it must have been a huge blow to, like, not book whatever you were gonna book that was gonna, push you to that next level of stardom.
Yeah, it's funny, I feel like weirdly now sometimes the disappointments feel even stronger.
Mm.
When I had them somewhat growing up, I felt like this really strong sense of, "Okay, it'll be the next one," and just keep powering through. But now I find myself falling sometimes into this trap, which is a really, it's so human and normal to kind of see what could be, and then you start to fall in love with the all that it could be, like uh the fantasy of what your life could be that you're so close to. And so I think for me now, I don't know, just realizing that I think I do keep reminding myself there's so much more to come, and to have had that experience in itself, getting to that place was a real gift.
Yeah.
And and I I believe everything happens for a reason, and that's been something that has really helped me in my life. And sometimes it's been something that I've had my own difficulties with, like, well, if everything happens for a reason, why did this terrible thing happen?
Right.
But but I think for the most part that really helps me and has proven true in my life, where looking back, this thing that I really wanted, I'm glad it didn't happen that way. So reminding myself of, like, the past times where I wanted something and it went a different way, and that different way ended up being so fulfilling.
That's amazing. Do you I know that you are big into like astrology and tarot cards and that kind of stuff. So, how do you do with manifesting and, like, trying to dream about those big goals while also, maintaining that sense of self and that stability as far as like, this is where I am right now. Everything happens for a reason. Like, how do you balance those two things?
I love reading about manifesting. I'm
Uh-huh.
really fascinated by it, and I feel that I have a good knack for it in my life. But I think the thing I've tried to focus on is maybe I don't necessarily want this specific thing, but I want what it represents for me or what I think I will feel once I have it. And then trying to assume those feelings into my current reality and focus on just my own well-being and feeling good versus I need to have this specific thing happen and that's going to be the only source of my happiness or joy. So that I think that's my answer.
Yeah. No, that's great. And there's a like career coach, Hollywood career coach person that I really resonate with, Erica Warnick, and she talks about yeah, like not manifesting the thing, manifesting the feeling. Like how is that job going to make you feel? How is like and to be more specific, how is that the camaraderie, like what kind of set do you want to be on, like what environment, an ensemble show where you're leading it, like what is the feeling that you're going to have, and to focus on the feeling instead of the physical thing. Because the episode that dropped today, for example, Leona Nelson, like she's someone who was an actor who was also like very close to breaking through so many times, has, had a lot of success in New York. Um, Easily, she mentions, like she knows like Marta Kaufman. So I made a joke about like, you could have been on The Next Friends. And she was like, yeah, I really could. Like, I'm close friend, like, and she's like, but she has pivoted her life to now becoming a career coach and like nutritional coach. Like that's now, and she's living in Portugal and she completely upended her life.
Mm,
And
cool.
and she talked in the episode about how her creative fulfillment became what she was searching for. And it wasn't as much the career, it was just like feeling creatively fulfilled, and how this new career of hers is giving that to her tenfold, which is incredible. Um, and so valuable, I think, for us to look at that.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. That's really neat. And I think it's also good to, like you said, think about the specifics of what you think you would like. And
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in writing things out or speaking things into existence and vision boards. But all of those things just help you get closer to the understanding of what you actually do want. And it's okay if that changes and shifts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with your I know that you are, a screenwriter as well. And there's a script that I've worked with you on before that is really fantastic. And that one in particular, talks a lot about like has some mental illness elements in it, and some, conversations around uh like suicide ideations and like what people go through and that kind of stuff. And I'm curious, where in your sphere, in your spectrum, has that come up for you? Like
Mm.
how can you write about that in an authentic way? How has that touched your life?
Oh, I mean, I feel like it's all around me in both like a personal way and just the culture that we live in. But I, for one, just most of my friends are artists and a lot of artists go through those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Um, so I've had a lot of personal experience with it from that standpoint. And then also just like, I've had my own bouts of depression and things that I've had to work through as well. But but I think it's a really hard time I mean, it's the only time I've been a young person in the world, but I think it's so it seems a increasingly a difficult time to be a young person in the world.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people that are older than me, and I've just asked, like, has it always been tough like this? Or is this just like getting older and realizing kind of what the world is like? And a few people older than me are like, no, it seems more difficult now for some reason. But the answer to your question is, yeah, I think it's kind of just the air we breathe sometimes.
Do you, you're very active on social media. You've got a wonderful Instagram presence and stuff that I will be sure to
Thanks.
shout out so that everyone can follow you. But how have you found, because, let's see, Facebook was like came to be when I was a senior in high school. And so it really, and that was when it was like only if you have a college email address were you allowed to get a Facebook.
Mm.
And I mean, I had MySpace, but like so different, and like AIM, but so different. And so I'm curious, like for you, really like growing up with social media as like, and growing up as an actor, a successful actor with social media, like how has your relationship with that changed? And yeah, just what have you had to do in order to manage that?
I mean, I think the comparison game is very real, and Instagram is it's very easy to look and see what people are doing and start to play that game. So I have to I try to for myself post and then not doom scroll, but I fall into it as well. I do feel lucky in that I think people my age specifically had kind of a good transition into the world of social media versus my 11-year-old sister, who's always been around it for entire existence and probably always will be around it.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I hope it kind of does, but
Yeah.
um yeah, I think for me it was nice to know a world before that was so prevalent, and that's been helpful in being able to shut it off and realize there's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
But I do like to I do like posting sometimes, and some of the friendships that you can cultivate or people you can meet through social media, trying to find authentic ways to interact with it, especially when it comes to self promotion. uh Specifically with music, I feel like that's such a big thing now, and the process of getting a label or having a music team, a lot of people are looking towards TikTok numbers and social media numbers, and it's also been something I've dealt with in acting too, where I've been down to, me and someone else, and the other person has however many, like, millions of followers, and I'm not there yet. Yeah, I think I'm learning how to better use it in a way that feels good to me, and also just to realize this is part of my job,
Mhm.
and that's okay. And also I'm sharing the things I'm passionate about through this, and that's okay. Like, that's the way I'm trying to program my mind to think about it. Of it's not just like it's okay to be a self promoter and to share the things that get you excited and that you believe in. And I saw this really cool Tyler the Creator video interview where he talked about this, and he was like, I don't understand how people will spend all this time writing the song, getting a producer, like all the hours in the studio, the mixing, like, and then you just post it like once on your Instagram and then never post about it again.
Yeah.
And he was like, why do you do all that if you're just gonna like not share it with people? What is the point? And that really struck a chord with me. So I feel inspired now to promote a little bit more.
Yeah. That's it. That's really helpful, actually. I'm going to remember that because I certainly have the same. And it's one of those things where it's like, like Are you afraid of being a bad parent? If you already have that fear, then like you're going to be a fine parent because you have the awareness that there is like good and bad. And it's like, same if you're like concerned about over promoting yourself, just the fact that you have that concern means that you are aware enough that you are not going to overstep that bound. But it's something that I certainly struggle with as well. So I totally get it.
Yeah. Natural.
Yeah, for sure. You know, going back to your songwriting, because I think that it has like evolved a lot as you've, grown up. And I'm curious, like what is your dream goal as far as like as a songwriter, as an actor? Like how do you want to balance all of these different personas and bring them into like 30-year-old Taylor? What's that going to look like?
I think it's shifting all the time, but the current vision is I want to be a showrunner. That's a dream of mine. And I'd love to also to have something that I'm acting in, that I'm also writing, and that I also create the theme song for. That's kind of the vision that I currently have. But I want to be able to tour at some point in my life. I don't think I want to be touring all of the time. That seems really exhausting and just comes with a lot of other difficulties, but it's something that I would like to experience at least once. And I really love travel and not just like going somewhere, but ideally immersing myself in a place a little bit more. And so I'm hoping that my creative work brings me to other places and that I can experience other cultures. And then I also feel like doing things like acts of service in some way is really important to me. And that's something I want to continue to think about and figure out like what that exactly looks like for me. But I like the volunteer work that I've done and do has been something that's really fulfilling for me. And it's something that I want to continue to do.
Mm. What kind of advocacy work are you involved in right now?
Right now, I teach some music lessons to kids,
Mm.
like high schoolers, and then previously I had also done ran like a feeder program for people at a homeless center, and and I'm also just trying to think of ways uh, to use the tools that I have and the creative skills I have towards helping people in a really immediate way. I think watching a movie or listening to a song does help people and it's a great escape and it hopefully can change how you operate in some way. But I also like something that's more immediate and interactive.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to usually my last question is like, what are one of the tools that you use on a daily basis or weekly basis in order to help you through difficult like mental health spiral or where you're just like having a moment of depression or anxiety or whatever. And I'm curious because you just mentioned film and um, music, if there is a tool that you would like to share now that helps you through dark times.
Yeah, I mean, I do think some of the things I mentioned, like just like playing piano or strumming my guitar, things like that are helpful to me. And journaling is a big thing for me. I'd say walking. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a really bad mental state, and then I just realize I'm super dehydrated and I just
Mhm.
need to drink water. And
Totally.
so that's a big one. Um, I created a list, an ever-growing list on the notes of my phone of like things to do when you're sad. And because sometimes when you're in a bad place, you feel like there's nothing you can do for yourself. And then that list is like, oh, there's like a plethora of things I can do, be it like phone a friend or watch a movie that feels good or um the walking and things like that. So taking a bath is another one.
Yeah.
Getting a massage. I got a massage the other day and I was like, wow, every problem that I have just went absolutely out the window.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's awesome because I feel like it's so important for us to take care of our like dark sides when we're feeling good. Because like only when we're feeling good do we really have like the mental clarity to be like, okay, like this is how I'm feeling right now. Like, even if we're just like a little bit frustrated or pissed off or whatever, like I said to you, like right before we got on the call, that I've had like a super crazy day. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to lay down on my couch for like 5 minutes and like not do anything, but just like lay down on the couch because like I knew that I needed that just 5 minutes of like relaxing time before jumping into something else. And so I think it's really valuable that you have that list that you can go back to. That way, when you are feeling low, you can be like, okay, I'm going to try all of these things. Um, yeah. Do you have a,
One of them's bound to work.
exactly, something is going to work. Do you have a therapist that you work with or have you had therapists in the past?
Yeah, I was just realizing that's another big thing too. I do have a therapist, and this is usually where I sit when I talk to my therapist because it's a virtual therapy session. But
Mhm.
that's really helpful. And I think for me, so often just hearing myself speak and kind of spewing anything that I need to get off my chest is really helpful. And then if there's nuggets of wisdom that like are provided as well on top of that, that's just like the icing on the cake. But I feel like having that consistent person to talk to is really great.
Yeah, I find that so often I'll go into a therapy session and be like, I've got nothing to say. And then I'll, yeah, like spew all sorts of stuff. And then it'll be so interesting, like the things that cause me to like choke up or have an emotional reaction to. And I'm like, interesting. Okay, that is something I need to think about more. I did not realize that that was affecting me so much.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, talking about protecting your like mental state when you're feeling high to like protect yourself when you're feeling low, it reminds me of the fact that they say that you need to have a really stable like sense of self and like self-worth when you're not famous. That way when you become that new level of stardom, you're able to like stay grounded and stay self-aware and just like have that um foundation to go back to. And I'm curious if that's something that you think about and um how you're building your future 30-year-old self that is going to be famous and a showrunner. How are you preparing for that?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because it's like not something I want, but I do want it in a sense
Uh-huh.
because it feels like a byproduct of like me achieving my big goals. Yeah, I am cognizant of those types of things, and I I just try to have good people around me, and I read a lot of spiritual books, so and I really enjoy reading them.
Do you
So I
have
try to just lean on those things.
Yeah, do you have any in particular that you want to shout out that have been helpful?
I love Gabby Bernstein. I think she's amazing. I'm a big Dr. Wayne Dyer person as well. Um, Gosh, there's I like the Four Agreements, and he's got the other one about is it called Mastery of Love? Does
Mhm,
that
mhm.
sound
Yep,
right?
yep.
Um, yeah, there's a few that I'm for sure there's quite a few I'm for sure missing, but those are some of the big ones for me. And Gabby Bernstein has a podcast, and so does Wayne Dyer, and I really enjoy those as well.
It's interesting because I always thought, like, number 1, I would love to be a showrunner as well, it's something that I have, like, very big dreams for myself and very big goals. It's interesting because I was talking with a friend of mine maybe a year ago, and we were talking about this. We were talking about success and our goals and our, like, where we wanna be in 10-year kind of thing. And I was someone where I was like, I would love to be like, the idea of being famous does not phase me. Like, I don't that does not scare me, and it would not, be something I would be opposed to. Whereas she is someone where she's like, I would never want to be more famous than, and I don't remember who she said, but it was someone who was like a well-known like independent film actor, but like she's never done any TV, she's never done any studio films. She's just like that, like that is her ceiling. And I was like, that's so interesting. And she was like, I have zero desire to like walk into a grocery store and people to know my name. I have zero desire. And it was like, and it's not that that's necessarily something that I'm like, ooh, I can't wait till that happens. That's not what I mean. But it's like that that does not scare me, that possibility. Whereas for her, she was like, absolutely not. That's not what I want. And so,
Yeah, I can connect to that.
yeah, but I think it's so important to like know what your boundaries are and your guidelines as far as your level of success. Um, because I think that it just it again it builds in your innate self-awareness before you reach a new level of fame or success or whatever. I think that's just really important.
Yeah, I think it somewhat depends on the kind of lifestyle you wanna live, and I had when I first moved to LA, I got my tarot cards read for the first time at a party at the Harry Houdini mansion,
Okay.
and it was very strange. It was a sweet 16 party that my friend had, and they had a tarot reader there, and she told me that I was gonna be kind of like an Iris Apfel type. Do you know who that is?
Mm.
Someone that, like, people have an appreciation for, but maybe not, like, a household name necessarily, and I was like, "That sounds great to me." I'd love to be, like, an older woman with crazy glasses. I'm now just, like, a younger person with crazy glasses, but, um, yeah, I like, that sounds awesome. I also would like to have probably around that level of fame.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple more final questions to wrap things up. Number one, I'm curious, just throughout your years here, do you have any other like takeaways or any other tips for anyone who's listening that is either like in the entertainment industry and trying to sustain themselves and stay mentally clear and sane? Or for someone who is just, I think that the entertainment industry and like what we do as creatives is often a heightened version of what people who aren't necessarily in a creative field are experiencing, but it's the same emotions, like our feelings of success and failure and, going through rejection and all of that kind of stuff. We may experience it on a weekly basis, but like everyone else is experiencing it too. So I think that, like, do you have any advice for anyone who's listening that you've learned from your like sustained time here? And I know because I know you that you're going to be here or in New York or wherever for a very long time.
I think if you have the opportunity to travel, that has been, at least for me, something that really puts things in perspective, where I think I've so easily got caught up in some of the BS of our industry and thinking that all of life revolves around TV and film, and it really does not.
Mhm.
And traveling other places has really helped me to remember that. And if you can somewhat create that for yourself here, and I think a good way to do that is just by having other interests and things that you give time to. Of course, you want to devote time to your passions, but I think everything is connected, especially as an actor. All of your different interests are going to fuel into each other. So making it a priority to spend time with your friends or your partner or just going on dates or spending time with your family and trying new things, trying things that you might be bad at and being okay with that. I think that's the best advice I can probably give.
Yeah, absolutely. And final question is, if you have any masks that are currently in your life that you are currently working on taking off, or just like any of your own personal ways that you might be hiding or holding yourself back from different things.
Yeah, I don't like people worrying about me. I do like to present this picture of I'm okay. I'm perfectly fine. And a lot of the times I feel I am in a good place, but I am working on letting people in more to some of my more vulnerable places. That and just being kinder to myself in general are some of the big things that I'm working on. Uh, I think a lot of creatives deal with this, with that feeling of you're not doing enough or you're not enough.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that I'm really trying to be nicer to myself about and know that I am doing more than enough and it's okay not to be doing things all the time.
What have you learned as far as like how to ask for help? Like how are you learning to ask for help or to be vulnerable and open with people?
I guess maybe just doing it incrementally,
Mhm.
slowly, and taking things day by day and finding people and that you feel comfortable with. And also, it's also okay to have privacy in your life and things that you're not willing to share or, you know, some people shouldn't know all your things. Like
Mhm.
some people aren't able to hold it um or don't want to. And that's fine too. So uh I think it's still stuff I am learning now, like who I want to let in and in what ways I want to do that. And I think for me personally, it's just kind of a, allowing it to be a slower opening up process.
How do you want people to follow you? What do you want people to check out? Because you have so many different things. I want to make sure that we point people to the right
I
place.
gotta get up to my million Instagram followers.
That's
So
amazing. Yeah, let's work on that.
not really, but I'm the musical mushroom on Instagram, and then I'm on YouTube and other places, just Taylor Blackwell. So if you just Google me and any support would be appreciated. I've got music videos out. I've got music out on all music platforms. I have vinyl out. Check it out if
You have
you'd like.
tarot cards.
I have oracle
Yeah,
cards.
oracle cards.
I have an Etsy shop.
Yeah,
Yes.
you do so much. Well, thank you so much for being here, Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was so fun.
Thank you again so much for listening to this episode with Taylor Blackwell of the More Than You See podcast. I want to give a special shout out again to Ryan Ricks for our opening and closing music. I also want to give a shout out to my friend and the editor of More Than You See, which is Katra Parkman. Katra, I could not do this without you. Thank you so much. And thank you to you, my listeners. I truly appreciate all of the feedback I've been getting, all of the comments I've been getting, all of the reviews and the sharings and all of the things that I've been getting. It truly helps encourage me to make these, because when I know that it's touching you the way that it's touching me, it encourages me to keep creating this content. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you being a part of this community. Please remember to be kind to yourself. Please remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.